Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where Barbenheimer has finally landed, and it did not disappoint. Ooh, yes, it turned out to be the perfect storm indeed, posting career bests for all involved, breaking box office records, and if we're lucky, really lucky, teaching Hollywood some important lessons, because they do love to stick their head in the sand. Is it pink sand from Barbie? All right, so yes, come on, Barbie, let's go party. That was the rallying cry this weekend, and while Barbie certainly helped Oppenheimer, I think it's fair to say that Oppenheimer helped Barbie a little as well. I was going to use the saying, a rising tide lifts all boats, but, here, Barbie was clearly the juggernaut. But it wouldn't have been as special if it wasn't going up against or releasing the same weekend as Oppenheimer, because people took different approaches to this motion picture event. So yes, I think both films would have been fine on their own, but they wouldn't be as special as they are. Creating such an amazing moment in pop culture, forget cinema, pop culture history, that it compelled even the most casual moviegoer to head to their local multiplex. I'm sure Hollywood is wondering, how can we do this again? But this, I'm not quite sure. Remember, this came out of spite for Warner Brothers trying to hurt Christopher Nolan. And it became just such a beautiful thing. And Hollywood didn't dream up this ad campaign. The internet did. It's a little bit like the grimace shake trend on TikTok. So I think sometimes you just have to ride the wave. I think there are definitely some things to take away from that we're going to discuss here. But I'm curious as to how you think this could ever possibly be repeated, or at least tried to be repeated, down below. Now, because of the marketing and how things unfolded, in some ways quite unfortunately on social media, people also felt that they were saying something with their ticket purchases this weekend. Some were supporting cinema, seeing a double feature either same day or same weekend with Barbie and Oppenheimer. And then some decided to support the movie they felt best reflected themselves, with, just like Barbie, a bit of a gender war breaking out at the multiplex. Fascinatingly, Barbie and Oppenheimer mirrored each other in many ways. Critic scores, audience scores. They split premium screens. Remember, we were worried? At first, Barbie could only get one Dolby showing a day, but the pre-sales were so strong, it drank Tom Cruise's milkshake. But Barbie got Dolby and Oppenheimer got IMAX. So two movies could survive same weekend, which was interesting to see, because usually a movie takes both. And they even mirrored each other in the gender divide, although, of course, female to male. On Friday, as I tweeted, Barbie was 71% female, but settled down over the weekend to an encouraging 68%, which I think, is a good potential sign for the weeks ahead. Now, it's perfectly natural that some people would like one movie over the other, myself included. But it was disheartening to see all the last-minute hate against Barbie online when what the movie was really like was revealed. As I've been telling you for months, they've kept that hidden in the ad campaign, and thank goodness. And maybe that was part of it, because, the hate campaign was as intense as expected, but it came out of nowhere at last minute, and everybody was already on the Barbie train. So instead, everybody seemed like a party pooper who came out against the movie. Party pooper, if you've ever seen Partysaurus Rex. What a great animated short. But anyway, people who didn't like Oppenheimer or felt there were issues with it certainly didn't campaign against the movie, so I think that's pretty interesting. But thankfully, unlike some of the other recent films that were torpedoed by online hate campaigns, almost all of them female-led. And some of them, of course, were just hated for existing, so they couldn't hide that factor in their ad campaigns. But Barbie not only survived, but thrived, with many pointing out, how could a movie be anti-male where the character getting the most buzz is Ken? Although it would unfortunately underscore exactly what the Barbie movie is talking about if Ken were the only major Oscar nomination for the film. I definitely want to see Ken nominated. Heck, I want to see him win. But some industry pundits are predicting that it would just be Ken. I think that hopefully that's not the case. We'll talk about that a little bit more in this video with the awards conversation for both movies. But hopefully Warner Brothers Discovery runs as aggressive an awards campaign for Barbie as they did a PR campaign. I hope they don't abandon the film, feeling, hey, we got our money, let's go. If they really want Barbie to be something special for decades, they will spend as much on the awards campaign. Make no mistake, you got to spend a lot of money on an awards campaign. You really do. All right, so speaking of the industry, many are pointing out that moviegoers are responding to these fresh and original ideas driven by strong talent. What do you know? In the middle of the WGA and SAG strikes. Oh, pay your talent. They do deliver, especially when these films are far outperforming the formula blockbuster-driven films of the summer, like, that could have been turned out by ChatGPT. I'm talking Fast and Furious 10 and Indiana Jones 5. Mission Impossible 7 is more of a victim, I think, of bad scheduling. Oof, talk about standing too close to an explosion. Tom Cruise got all his box office eyebrows blown off. But at the same time, I do think it's the same old from Tom Cruise, no matter how good that same old might be. With these long-running franchises, audiences are clearly starting to think to themselves, I'll catch it down the line, especially when it's cheaper and more convenient. But these new, fresh ideas that are very, very aggressive in their messaging on both sides, and that's making people feel, I gotta see this in theaters, I gotta join the party, I have to be part of the experience. Perhaps Top Gun Maverick. We've been wondering, what's the difference between Top Gun Maverick and Mission Impossible 7? Well, Top Gun Maverick, I bet, benefited from from revisiting a film that hadn't been discussed for over 30 years when it came out. And also, big military films that play like a summer blockbuster are very rare. Barbie had a lot of best day of box office since Avengers Endgame headlines across the globe, not just in the United States. And I believe whatever happened to Marvel? I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy did very well. But overall, I do believe, as Bob Iger himself recently acknowledged, that thanks to too many films a year and all the Disney Plus shows, MCU films no longer feel like the events that they once were. And that is affecting their appeal and box office. It's also worth noting that Barbie and Oppenheimer themselves play like summer blockbusters. While Oppenheimer was advertised as one, although I do not think that it plays as one. Yet both are extremely financially, fiscally responsible. With Barbie less than half of the budget of most blockbusters that were made this year, and Oppenheimer coming in at just a third. Oh, that's beautiful. And while people still turned out in droves. Although, again, plenty was spent on the advertising campaigns. The most on Barbie. Now, Oppenheimer, pretty good. They kind of kicked it up at the last minute. And while it seems every dime might have finally been squeezed out of superhero films and perhaps live-action fairy tales from Disney as well, audiences are now getting excited not only about video game adaptations, but also a different kind of nostalgia, toys! Hollywood producers should just go revisit the Toys That Made Us documentaries and be like, what can we do with a movie here? Like, why is it taking so long to get that He-Man movie off the ground? Although I do think that the recent Netflix animated series did a lot of damage. But anyway, the two biggest openings this year, Barbie and Super Mario Brothers. Oh, and Toys R Us, that's trying to come back, but I think that's really, really interesting. And also, let's give Oppenheimer its flowers as well. This is very exciting for the prestige drama, a genre which many in Hollywood worried had been killed off by the superhero movie. But it's still alive, quite alive. And with such an incredible opening for Oppenheimer, although again, Oppenheimer was kind of advertised like a superhero comic book movie, and it's from a director who directed one of the most popular and revered superhero movies of all time and changed the entire industry. More on that in a moment. But I think this is very encouraging for Killers of the Flower Moon and Napoleon later this year. Both also very big awards films from big name talent. Maybe also I think The Color Purple could benefit, which has a little Barbie factor in there as well, as a female-led musical. In fact, trailers for The Color Purple played in front of Barbie, as did Challengers. Although Challengers, and I think Zendaya could make that potentially a sleeper hit. Not at the Barbie level, but better than you would expect that film to do. But MGM just blinked and moved it to April of 2024 because of the SAG strike and actors' inability to promote Challengers on the festival circuit, which is crucial to an awards campaign starting up. And The Color Purple, it's rumored, Warner Brothers Discovery might move that film as well. That's pretty far down the line. I personally wouldn't be, maybe Challengers because it comes out a little earlier, but I would be waiting until Labor Day to move these films. I think the awards race is so light right now that you're just going to make it easier for the movies that have already come out if all these other movies blink. And while these big numbers are very exciting, we really do have to wait to see the second weekend drops for both films to get a true picture of how they're going to perform overall. Like, is this just a one weekend party? Or will these big opening weekends inspire others to check out the films in the coming weeks ahead? And also, what's repeat business going to look like for both movies? I mean, they have very good audience scores, but they also, I think, are a little more niche than they both made it seem in their advertising campaign. So I think there's still very much a question mark over both movies for the long term. I would say, though, that with this boffo global debut, Barbie does have now a shot again at $1 billion. It's back on the table. It could happen. And as for Oppenheimer, because it's actually more of a slow drama, I feel the disconnect between the advertising campaign and the actual film is greater for Oppenheimer. And I don't see a lot of repeat viewing, even from hardcore Christopher Nolan fans, like maybe only the most hardcore, because it's slow and because it's so long. But I'm not discounting Oppenheimer. I think that it's still on track for anywhere from 500 to 700 million, which again with that budget is absolutely incredible and would be incredible for any film like this, any prestige drama. And also it's in line with Nolan's other non-Batman movies, that kind of number, closer to 700. You know, if it's really, really strong and it really, really connects, I see it maybe the higher end of that range. But this has always been an Oscar play for Nolan. He's made no apologies about that. Now, I don't know how many categories the film will actually win, but I do expect it to get plenty of nominations. Barbie? Well, the industry, the awards pundits are saying it's a shoo-in for Best Supporting Actor for Ryan Gosling, and also stuff like production design, costume design, and hair and makeup. But it would be a crime, a true travesty, if Greta Gerwig does not get nominated for Best Director, at least. I think the film also deserves Best Adapted Screenplay for how smart it is. Check out my spoiler review where I break it all down. And I also think it deserves, particularly because how big that category is, up to 10 nominees, it deserves the Best Picture nomination. I'm not even saying it needs to win any of these, but it deserves the nomination. And I'd also throw Best Song in there for I'm Just Ken. Now, we'll see how strong the rest of the year is when it comes to awards films. And again, if any of them blink and bow out like Challengers did. So we'll, due to the strikes. And maybe the strike will be resolved, but so far it's not looking good. I mean, they're at the petty level of trimming trees, so there's no shade for strikers. I mean, it's bad. All right, so now let's break down each film individually, their numbers. So we've talked about the phenomenon. Now let's talk about the two movies that made it happen. So Barbie is the biggest opening of the year. It's a bit of a squeaker right now, but some feel that by the time the final numbers come in on Monday, it could even be a little higher than this. It is by far and away a career best for everyone involved, even Margot Robbie with her Suicide Squad movies. And it is the biggest debut ever for a film directed by a woman. Oh boy, which indicates several things. First, that Greta Gerwig is not only a great director creatively, but business-wise as well. And that is an element that previous female directors have been missing. It's very exciting to see what other doors Gerwig might be able to break down, and she wants to break them down. She's going for it. So far, not a single female director has been able to have multiple box office hits. They've always been one-hit wonders, and that has been a real shame. So, Greta Gerwig's going to Netflix next, which I'm a scooch disappointed about because I would like to see her back in the box office arena. But I'm hoping that she gets something else soon. We'll talk about what in a moment. This also shows that women are deeply underserved by Hollywood. And Hollywood clearly has not mobilized them enough as a fan base. Case in point, let's talk superhero movies. Barbie opened bigger than Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman. That's shocking. To be fair, Captain Marvel is very close, but I think we all can agree that got a boost by opening between Infinity War and Endgame, and then also, of course, introducing the Skrulls, which are huge for any Marvel fan knows. That was a very, very big deal. To me, this says that superhero movies with female leads aren't getting it right. They're leaving money on the table. Even She-Hulk on Disney Plus. And that was very similar in a feminist message, but I said that what Barbie achieves is remarkable because it gets the balance just right, whereas you can see that She-Hulk fell on her face when it comes to feminist messaging. I do think that She-Hulk in the right hands could be Barbie level, as well as, of course, Wanda. She powered Multiverse of Madness to what it was. I think, quite frankly, at this point, and the fact that you're seeing Barbie move ahead, Marvel's taking too long to bring her back. Even Elizabeth Olsen's kind of like, peace out, I'm out of here, man. But she can't get a footing anywhere else, so she's still available. And maybe even Black Widow could have done better if a different approach had been taken. What would a true A-Force movie be able to do instead of what they've decided to do with the Marvels? Many fans are saying that Greta Gerwig should direct DC's upcoming Supergirl movie. And having read that comic myself, which James Gunn has said the movie will be based on, I can't think of a more perfect match. Greta Gerwig should 1,000% be picked to direct that film, if she wants to. But, I don't think you'd be able to find a better director. Because that's going to be tricky too. Particularly if you've read that comic. That comic is also feminist. Now, Barbie had mass appeal across the board, thank goodness, with great diversity demos. And again, it was no more female at the end of the day than Oppenheimer was male. So you can't ding Barbie for that if you're not going to ding Oppenheimer for it. And it hit the sweet spot with the 18 to 24 crowd thanks to being a juggernaut on social media. Some families did show up, but overall, Barbie played like the adult film that it is. It is summer, though, so maybe some families will decide to check the film out during the week when the crowds are a little lower to see what all the fuss is about. Again, I think Barbie is a great film for kids 10 and up, especially if their parents take the time to check the film out first to be ready to discuss the film afterwards. Now the question is, what does Warner Brothers Discovery do next? Well, I think they might be tempted to announce a sequel or Ken spin-off movie. I sure hope they hold off, because I think that would severely hurt the film's awards chances. People would be focusing on the sequel already, and I think a lot of people in the industry would feel, well, that's the reward that it gets for the box office. Instead, let it bask in the glow of its success and the conversation that it's generating. And then after the Oscars, no matter what happens, I mean, they might be worried that if it doesn't win or doesn't get a lot of nominations, it would be coming from a place not as much strength. No. Fans will be upset that it doesn't get nominated, and that'll just spark a whole kind of different conversation about how unfair that is. So wait, and then if this team wants to do a sequel or a spin-off, then move full steam ahead. Because clearly, Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie in particular, they are the creative force behind this movie, and they're the magic. And they need to be heavily involved in whatever Barbie might become for Warner Brothers Discovery moving forward. Even a Ken movie, if only as producers. And on that note, because we just can't help ourselves, what male writer-director do you think could potentially tell Ken's story? Who do you think would be a good fit with this? I'm going to have to think about it. That's an interesting question. But again, right now I'm focused on Barbie continuing to do well at the box office and really delivering at least award nominations. Over to Oppenheimer, again, ironically, Warner Brothers first put Barbie up against this film to punish Nolan for leaving the studio for Universal. Although now, of course, hilariously, now that Warner Brothers Discovery's film division is under new management, and the whole company is, they're trying to woo Nolan back. They gave him a huge multi-million-dollar check to make up for Tenet. And now I guess they can point to this and say, see, it's all good. This is what we always intended. Because Barbie did help Oppenheimer give Nolan his best ever opening for a non-Batman movie. Although, who knows how Tenet could have done if it hadn't been the pandemic? I liked that movie, as I've said. It probably would have had to be in theaters with subtitles because it was impossible to hear the sound mix, but it could have done well. It's kind of comic booky itself. It's more comic booky than Oppenheimer. During his press tour for Oppenheimer, Nolan, he's going around saying he still wants to direct a Bond movie. He's being a squeaky wheel. He wants that sweet Bond grease. And he's probably like, why aren't I still in the conversation for Bond? I know, I'll put myself back in the conversation. And good for him. I think after this debut, the Bond producers should strongly consider him because Oppenheimer, as I said, was advertised as a comic book-like movie and audiences showed up in droves. So imagine what he could do for Bond. I also think he's pretty good at casting male actors, and I think he could help picking the new Bond. I mean, I think if the new Bond had the Nolan stamp of approval, that would help as well. But even though Oppenheimer is not like a comic book movie, after all, the audience scores, it's important to note, are still high. So the film could still continue to do well, simply due to Nolan's prestige and the fact that the film portrays such an important part of history that has up to this point been rarely discussed in, the broader pop culture medium. Plus, it's a very good-looking movie, and it has a lot of name actors in the cast. It's chock full of, I wouldn't say stars, all of them are stars, but certainly people you recognize and like. It's a tasty meatloaf dinner, even if it's not the best meatloaf dinner you've ever had. I believe almost everyone at some point, be it in theaters or on digital or on Peacock down the line, will give Oppenheimer a look, especially if it gets those award nominations. Oppenheimer also did very well with the 18 to 34 crowd. I think due to Nolan's fan base, he's the intellectual Zack Snyder, as well as the Barbenheimer social media craze. Diversity demos could be a little better though, particularly with the black community, but as you can see, the film is clearly still doing very well. As for the rest of the top 10, Mission Impossible took such a big hit from Barbenheimer that it fell below Sound of Freedom to 4th place with a 64% drop. Whereas Fallout, the last Mission Impossible, fell just 42% in its second weekend. Tom Cruise had appealed to SAG to let stars continue to promote their films despite the strike, and they were of course like, no Tom. He'd already done so much promotion, but I guess he wanted to try and keep himself in the conversation. But I don't know if even Tom Cruise could have broken through the Barbenheimer hype, and likely would have embarrassed himself in the process. Although, this is pretty embarrassing too. Surely he's miffed at Paramount execs who put him so close to Barbenheimer in the first place, although Cruise is so hands-on with his films, and has the ability to do so at this point, that he surely signed off on this release strategy himself. I think he very much underestimated Barbenheimer. He's already filming Mission Impossible 8, but again, maybe he should look to do something fresher after that, more along the lines of Top Gun Maverick. And I think we're now starting to get a better idea of why Top Gun Maverick was so successful. So it's great. It's so great. That's why it's important to pay attention to this stuff and look at it with an open mind. Sound of Freedom is well past 100 million at this point, as some of you predicted, and is still going, falling just 26% in its third weekend, not far behind the domestic total of Dial of Destiny. In fact, Barbie, in one weekend, is on par or higher than every film in the top 10. Wow, except for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is getting tantalizingly close to 400 million, and doesn't hit digital until August 8th. I don't know if it'll actually get there, but it's gonna kiss 400 million. It's gonna be beautiful. Over on streaming, starting with Nielsen for late June, while Harry and Meghan have hit a bit of a rough patch lately, Meghan's got to at least feel good that Suits is doing so well now that it's available on Netflix. And Suits is a pretty good show on its own, but that has to be a factor. Black Mirror continues to do well in its second week here, along with Extraction 2 also in its second week, and also still doing quite well. Meanwhile, Avatar 2, a few weeks out at this point on digital, is losing some steam. And Hulu's decision to release The Bear Season 2 as a binge was, at least on its debut week, a huge success, making it the new Ted Lasso on these charts, placing where Ted Lasso has been placing. So let's see if it can mirror Ted Lasso's award wins at the upcoming Emmys, where both shows have a ton of nominations. Although Ted Lasso is week to week, and let's see if The Bear disappears from the streaming charts as quickly as it landed on them, because it's a binge instead of week to week. So the jury's not out on this decision yet. On the originals chart, here's Secret Invasion. Oh, talk about embarrassing. It has a moderate debut, unable to crack the overall chart, instead playing like the recent Star Wars shows that only appealed to diehard fans and failed to excite the rest of the fan base. I told you it was the new Andor, and it's the new Andor in viewership as well. Nothing too exciting happening over in the movie space either, although again, as you can see, Extraction 2 managed to pull ahead of Avatar 2 and top the chart this week. Although the rest of the movies are doing so poorly, Avatar 2, which was so low on the overall chart, as you might recall, is like at the top of the movies chart. Over on Netflix, it's slow here too. So The Outlaws was able to remain the #1 movie, followed by Sony's 65, which finally hit Netflix thanks to their deal. Plus Puss in Boots 2 is over here, debuting on Netflix and posting solid numbers, although everybody already watched it on digital and on Peacock, and in theaters. Very strong performer, as you know. As for Nimona, it still has an audience, but it remains soft. It has some awards buzz, though. I'm seeing it as a frontrunner for an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature, and that would go a long way towards getting it a sequel, because these numbers aren't really doing it. With shows, The Lincoln Lawyer Season 2 it went up from second place to #1 for its first full week, but it's a very soft #1. And in fact, this whole chart is pretty freaking sad. Netflix has really slowed down the pace of releases thanks to the writers and actors strikes. Plus the franchises that they are releasing are not performing like they are supposed to. Is It Cake, The Witcher, these are supposed to be bigger. Then on iTunes, Warner Brothers Discovery can breathe a sigh of relief that The Flash is still #1, even though it dropped on Tuesday. It could have fallen from #1 by the time we hit today, and that would have been bad. And hey, look, the audience rating is not horrible. Universal's Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken was also rushed out to digital and is doing only okay, not as well as The Flash, because what do you know, friendly fire from Universal's other animated movie, Super Mario Brothers. And Asteroid City, while that's been able to stay in the top 10, well, it has a slightly lower audience rating here than The Flash and Fast X. Oh boy, I think that movie's done everything it's going to do. Maybe 1 or 2 Oscar nominations, but it's not really, certainly not Wes Anderson's best. As for this coming weekend, again, it's all about those second weekend drops for Barbie and Oppenheimer, which we'll be watching, the whole industry, fans, everybody, will be watching like a hawk. What are you doing for the second weekend of Barbie and Oppenheimer? My family couldn't get IMAX tickets for Oppenheimer opening weekend. I really want my parents to see it on the IMAX screen. Even though I don't think that that's a strong word. I don't think it needs the IMAX screen, but darn it, that's how Christopher Nolan intended it. So we are going to be one of those groups going this coming weekend. How about you? Are you catching either of these films this coming weekend for the very first time, or are you seeing them again? As for new movies, Haunted Mansion can breathe a sigh of relief that Barbie is not for kids, as it will try to target the family audience. Clearly hitting theaters now so it can hit Disney Plus for Halloween. But it's not all about that, because many of us think this is ridiculous. Many of us feel Haunted Mansion should have come out closer to Halloween in theaters. But remember, Haunted Mansion, which was before a late August release, and now it has to take this date because the Marvels couldn't make this release date because it ended up needing reshoots. But wow, did the Marvels dodge a bullet? Can you imagine if that had had to open the weekend after Barbenheimer? I think it would have suffered perhaps even a worse fate than Mission Impossible. So we'll see how Haunted Mansion fares, and the review embargo, by the way, lifts on Tuesday. There's also in theaters A24's horror movie Talk to Me, which has some chatter, as well as a new quirky Nicolas Cage movie, and we'll see if either one of those movies can break through the Barbenheimer hype as well. Speaking of families, this is some more weird programming from the studios because The Little Mermaid hits digital on Tuesday. What's Disney doing having that come out the same week as Haunted Mansion? I think they have very similar appeal. And Little Mermaid is available conveniently at home for a much lower price point. So that to me is like beyond stupid in terms of strategy. There's also a direct-to-video animated Resident Evil movie and a new direct-to-video DC animated movie as well. That one, Justice League War World. On streaming with movies, Apple TV has The Beanie Bubble on Friday, the story behind the Beanie Babies toy craze and scandal. Is that another toy phenomenon? I don't quite think it's going to be like Barbie and Super Mario Brothers. Well, Disney Plus has The Slumber Party, which some are saying is the hangover for tweens. And Ellie, I doubt that if that's on Disney Plus. And also, Ellie Kemper has a new movie on Netflix. Then with series, here's some real competition because there's some exciting stuff happening here. Zoe Saldana has a new show on Paramount Plus that starts tonight. Created by Yellowstone and Sicarios, Taylor Sheridan, Morgan Freeman, and Nicole Kidman are also involved. Not bad. I might check that out, if not tonight, this week. Hulu is going to keep cooking after The Bear, with Futurama starting tomorrow, Monday, as a weekly release, and the Hardy Boys returning with Season 3. Season 3, where are the first 2 seasons? On Wednesday. Wednesday also sees the Great British Baking Show, The Professionals, here on Netflix. While I'm sure that's probably already played within the UK. Did anyone watch it? Was it good? While on Thursday, The Witcher Season 3 Part 2 drops, even though nobody seems that jazzed about Part 1. Twisted Metal starts already on Peacock, as well as Season 4 of Harley Quinn on Max. While on Friday, Good Omens returns finally with its Season 2 on Prime Video. That's a lot of stuff. So that's this week's Movie Math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what are your thoughts on Barbenheimer, both this weekend and for the upcoming weekend? What do you think those second weekend drops are going to be? And realistically, try to realistically think about it. I'm not saying it has to be positive, but we'll all be able to tell if your predictions have a hater spin on them for either movie. All right, share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.